This conference will now be
Thank you very
recorded.
much. Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to our final formal summer webinar session about diversity and inclusive messaging, presented by myself and my super duper colleague Rebecca Famboli. So the goals for today during this webinar are to reflect on diversity in engineering, review some insights available from research, and process those insights from some personal experiences to provide some tangible ideas. Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusiveness is being asked to dance. All right, so just a little bit behind the scenes if you have not met us through emails or through previous webinars. Here we have our Engineers of Tomorrow team. We run the Engineers in Residence program and have been helping you out this entire time. So Erica Lee Garcia is the founder of our wonderful organization, and Rebecca White is our CEO. Myself, Nathan Tang, and Rebecca Famboli are mechanical engineering students at the University of Waterloo and the University of Guelph, respectively, helping to get everything up and running.
Great. So why should we focus on diversity, especially in STEM? Well, because we have seen groups that have been intentionally excluded and still face systemic barriers and biases, such as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC for short, women and gender diverse folks, 2S LGBTQIA, and people with different abilities. It is undeniably evident through science and research that we can do a better job in STEM outreach. We can step up and ensure that everyone, regardless of their background, is at an equal opportunity. Now, more specifically, why should we focus on diversity in engineering? Engineering and technology will benefit greatly from having diverse perspectives. Imagine all the missed ideas that never came to fruition because of the systemic barriers and challenges that these underrepresented groups and minorities face. Equality and access to opportunity should be unquestioned and should be mandatory to allow every single engineer to succeed within their career. Let's talk about the history of seatbelts and how they reflect diversity within our community. Since women traditionally did not drive, seatbelts were originally designed by men for men. When women started driving, we started to see seatbelt injuries because the original design did not account for the diversity of drivers.
Great. So now we'll name some phenomenal women in engineering who came from diverse backgrounds. So Elsie McGill, also known as the Queen of Hurricanes, was the first practicing woman engineer who paved way for many other women in engineering to come. Her refinements introduced on the Hurricane included skis and de-icing controls for winter operation, paving the way to success for the Russian Air Force. Another amazing person, Mary Jackson, who became NASA's first black female engineer and helped with analysis on aircraft aircraft flight experiments. Sorry. Imagine if we had excluded them from engineering since they were underrepresented. It's time we continue to break through these systemic barriers to welcome diverse and unique perspectives and discoveries. Now we'll take a look at some data because as engineers, we like to know what the data is and how we can improve. Currently, 18.1% of newly licensed engineers in Canada are women, according to Engineers Canada, and 4.3% of the engineering profession are Black engineers, according to the National Science Foundation.
Here, you can see UWaterloo's 2017 Systems Design Engineering class. As you can see, a much more diverse group of engineers than what I'm about to show you next. Here, Nathan, do you want to click to the next slide? Is the undergraduate class of 1960 for chemical and biological engineering. Do you see the difference? Let's take a look at some more recent data from ONWE. 24.4% of undergrad engineering students across Ontario in 2019 were female. 16.5% of the engineering faculty across Ontario in 2019 were female, 25.5% of enrolled students in their first year of engineering across Ontario in 2019 were female. And lastly, 12.8% of Ontario's professional engineers across Ontario in 2019 were female. Of course, this is a huge improvement from what it was before, but imagine the countless other amazing things we could do if we continue to improve our diversity. Next, let's talk about stereotype threats. So we'll provide a bit of evidence to support this idea. There was a study done in 1999 with male and female participants. One group was told that the math tests that they would receive and take historically showed gender differences. They were told that the test shows that women tend to perform lower than their male counterparts, which would invoke a high stereotype threat within the participants of this group. The other group was told that there was no gender differences in the past, so this would invoke a lower stereotype threat, and these are the outcomes shown on the next slide.
It was found that when women were told that the test had specifically shown that women were worse at math than men, they tended to perform lower on the test, whereas in the other
Okay.
group, when nothing was said, women performed better. These studies show that the losses of stereotype threat are real, and it undermines performance, it triggers concerns about belonging, it lowers engagement and retention, people feel isolated, participate less, and then they ultimately leave, and it can even threaten health. Let's introduce another analogy. Imagine two runners in a race. They complete the preliminary race in the same amount of time, but one runner is wearing ankle weights. In the final race, that runner removes the ankle weights. Who do you think will win? Now, the runner with the ankle weights should win because that person has more running ability. Even though first performances were equal in time, one did it with external pressure of weights holding them back. This type of situation arises more often than you think, not with the ankle weights necessarily, but with other external or environmental pressures holding back people's performance. Women and minorities have stereotypes about their abilities that can undermine their performance. So their performances, with these pressures in place, actually underestimate their true ability. If these pressures are removed, they perform even better.
Researchers at Waterloo and Stanford looked at test performance under stereotype threat or under reduced threat from data of over 15,000 students in 5 countries. This shows us that our assumptions about women or visible minorities having less ability is false. When we remove the biases that affect their performance, or the weights on their ankles, they perform every bit as well or better. So we know that this gap is worth working to close because when we lose the performance of those students, we also lose their contributions to the engineering profession. This could represent new designs, new inventions, new improvement processes, and new ideas. You, as an outreach leader, have the ability to start changing this, to take the ankle weights off. Now that was a lot to process. Let's pause and use the chat box to have a discussion about these prompts.
Yeah, so we'll read off the first question and then maybe you guys can sort of unmute or in the chat box discuss some answers that you have. So, have you ever experienced stereotype threat? When? With whom? What happened? And how did it feel? Great. So it looks like today everybody is a little bit sleepy, but that is okay. It does happen a lot often, especially in the education system. I remember when I was in school, a huge stereotype was that Asians should be good at math and they should be good at academics in general. Um, and of course, that isn't true. However, it does place a stereotype threat when you sort of undermine other other people of different cultures and different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit on girls in engineering as well. Being in engineering and being in mechanical engineering, especially, there's definitely been a few points throughout my education so far where you've gone more kind of head to head with a male classmate. And, that's a situation that you kind of learn to make your way through. But sometimes it feels like you need to prove yourself a little bit more. But that would be my experience. And we have someone in the chat. Thank you, Susan. There was definitely bias against girls in math and science when I was growing up in the 1970s and 80s. That wasn't that long ago, don't worry. But yeah, definitely, right? So, those biases were definitely prevalent then, and we're still kind of seeing them now, but they're lessening, and we're hoping that through this outreach we can kind of be part of the change to hopefully make them maybe not disappear completely, but lessen as we continue going on.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll move on to our next question. So, how do you feel learning about these systemic factors that are holding back our efforts to make engineering inclusive and equitable? I guess I can go first on this one. I feel that like learning about these systemic factors are, yeah, exactly, as Navan said, is the first step. Awareness is the first step, right? So once we know that this is happening and there's these certain, I guess, mismatches, like we're not giving everybody equal opportunity, right? We're sort of missing out on all of these amazing things that could have happened, right? As I said earlier, like women in engineering is such a powerful thing, and without women, actually, not many of the inventions that we know today and many of the improvements that we know today in engineering would not exist, right? So yeah, awareness is the first step. Thanks, Navan.
Great. So then, and then the last question is there a part of you resisting these insights? And if so, how?
Yeah, I'm hi, my name is Chuka. Sorry I joined late. Um, can you hear
Hi,
me?
Truka.
Hi. Hi guys.
Hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Thanks so much. I there's not a part of me, definitely not. I think these are essential insights to be embraced, to be appreciated. I'm coming from the angle of having my own dependents, upcoming engineers, and I feel we need to be aware of these factors and do all we can to ensure that doesn't limit the potentials both of any of our upcoming professionals, right? So our upcoming students and professionals eventually. So In my own viewpoint, I don't. Nothing makes. I don't see it as anything. Nothing is resisting. And no part of me is resisting this insights. I am appreciative of of what they stand for. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's very important that, like as you mentioned earlier, to sort of let these changes happen because they are basically at the forefront, and we're sort of trying to break down traditional norms of what an engineer looks like or does, you know, and try to give the same opportunity to everybody. So thanks for sharing.
Yes, thank you. And like Paolo said, he believes everyone must be open to changes no matter what. So exactly, just trying to, change, and keep in mind, uh, the biases that we are trying to eliminate around engineering. Awesome. So what can you do? Let's put the research into action. We'll help you design a more inclusive outreach experience with the following tips. So, one of our outreach interventions is to be relatable. Let's challenge a very common notion that femininity and STEM are anti ethical with images of feminine professionals. Being both feminine and successful in STEM may seem too out of reach and demotivating for girls. But when girls can relate to the role models and see something in common with them, it has a positive effect. For example, eighth grade girls had more positive attitude towards scientists after meeting female scientists with accomplishments and with lives outside of work. Feminine females can also revolutionize the workplace by not only providing new perspectives, but can also lead with confidence.
Yeah, so another intervention that works well is reconceptualizing intelligence and ability to have more of a growth mindset. So, what this means is emphasizing the importance of effort, persistence, and gradual improvement over time instead of immediate results or innate ability. This helps to make a safer environment so the idea that intelligence is fixed and you either have it or you don't is abolished. Same thing with any talents or specific skills. It can be much more positive and can help decrease these gaps that we see within groups. So, what you can do is share your own stories of failure and recovery. If you're in a classroom and you seem like this perfect person who's never failed in life and always got incredible grades, that can be a lot harder for students to relate to if they maybe aren't doing as well in their classes, but they're very interested in certain topics. Saying things such as keep trying or work hard and you'll get it is a very good tool. You can also say everyone makes mistakes in the beginning. And again, that goes back to sharing your own stories and having that idea that maybe you don't seem to have this talent, but if you work really hard, you'll be able to get there as well. For students especially, they're always very curious, so if you give them a project and maybe it doesn't go the way they were expecting and they're upset about it, you could say, well, what can you learn from this experience and what things didn't go well and what would you change in the future? That's the idea of having a growth mindset and really focusing on improving in the future. Another intervention is modeling respect for women and minorities. What that means is when men or majority group members show respect for women and minorities, participants perform better, and what you can do is have equality when sharing. Whenever possible, let women and minority leaders lead activities and address your event participants. It's not necessary to mention why. Speak about your own diversity, co-lead whenever possible, and listen when they speak. Ask someone of a minority for advice or help in front of your audience. Be inclusive in whatever you're doing and try to have diversity in the people that you're talking to by answering questions and receiving advice or help from all participants. Your participants may experience stereotype threat during one of your outreach events, and you can reduce or eliminate it with wise psychological interventions.
Yeah, so another intervention that you might use is to set high standards and then give the assurance that these standards can be met. Research has shown that conveying you have high standards for people and that you're confident they can meet these standards leads to an increase in motivation. From your perspective as a mentor, you want to convey to the kids and employees that you have high standards, but that they can also meet these. Make sure to continue encouraging kids that might not understand right away. Don't change the task for them. Instead, say something like, I know this is a challenge, but I know you can do it. This can be very helpful in their persistence and eventually the accomplishment that they feel and receive once they do complete this. You can even mention that engineers love failure because it helps us figure out ways to make our own designs even better.
Right. And so our last intervention is showing that you value diversity. So what this means is that being colorblind or gender blind or ignoring any issues or gaps that you see actually discourages different minorities. So what you can do is show diversity in photos and promotional material that you're using. You can talk about encouraging, embracing, and valuing diversity. You can say things like, we need everyone's contributions. Join us, there's a place for you, and use inclusive language to help show that everyone is valued and that there's a place for them in engineering or any profession they choose. Here's a bit of a summary of some of the strategies that we've covered and strategies you can use. So you can provide positive, relatable role models and examples, set and keep high standards that can be met, and promote a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. You can also demonstrate how diversity is valued and model respect for women and minorities.
Now we'll talk about some best practices. First, check in with some important dates. An example of how this is useful can be directly taken from one of our very own EIRs. One of our EIRs, who likes to do an activity which involves edible content, could not have everyone participate since they had unintentionally conducted it while some students were fasting. Now, they start off every year with a list of important cultural dates to avoid this from happening. Next, you can go out of your way to talk about, like I said, how as engineers we love to fail. Why? It provides us with important information on how we can improve our designs. Part of being an engineer is making mistakes so that you can make something better, faster, and more efficient. Another best practice is to learn about your biases. There is a free online tool that you can help with that can help you with finding this, and you can access it using the link on the slide. Learning more about your own biases can help you understand the influences that affect your decisions, choices, and attitudes. You can help yourself make better choices when you learn about your biases. Lastly, show all your sides. Going back to femininity and engineering, women can be feminine, love makeup, hair and heels, and still be very capable and interested in solving important, difficult problems and doing technical work. Showing who you are and being authentic can show others that the engineering community is diverse and anyone can be an engineer. In this photo, you can see Vanessa Vicaria, aka the Math Guru. She is a great example of a STEM leader that challenges these notions. She shows her feminine traits and she's in a rock band. She's pretty cool.
Yeah, and your contribution matters, and so does your energy level. The work that you're putting in is not in vain. You might not be able to see it directly or recognize it, but what you're doing in the classrooms has a huge effect on individuals and on people's idea and mentality around STEM and their idea of if it's the right fit for them.
All right, so now we're just going to have a quick Q&A period. Please feel free to send a question in the chat or unmute your mic and ask. We'll try to answer all the questions.
All right, I guess I'll start us off in this Q&A period. A question that you might have is maybe, oh, so Alok has a question. Where can we find the previously recorded sessions? So they're actually at EIR.ca under our resources tab. We tend to post all the recordings before the end of each week. Yep. Thank you, Becky. There's the link. As well. So, as I was saying before, a question that usually arises is maybe you don't know so much about someone's upbringing or background while you're in the classroom and you're working with them, and it might be different from the culture or background of your own, and maybe how can you sort of accommodate this? So, in terms of accommodation, normally we ask you to keep an open mind and be invested and actually try to learn about other people's cultures and upbringings. Not only will it actually expand your biased point of views, but um, they'll sort of give you a new perspective in a lot of ways. Yep, and as Becky
Yeah.
said, the bonus session will cover the methods and resources that we recommend if you have to do your events virtually. Okay, well, it looks like we have no other questions. So, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And please check out our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And don't forget about our blog post on our website where we share updates. As well, just as a note, again, the slides and the recordings of our presentations are posted on our website under our resources tab during the remainder of each week. As well, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on the EOT team, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. And that's the end of our formal training. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Nathan and Rebecca. Hi, everyone. It's Becky here. Just before everyone leaves, can you share also about the some link you guys set up for accessing some of these really great photos that everyone's welcome to use in like a presentation in the classroom or something?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah, for
course. So
sure.
all the photos that were in this presentation that you are fully welcome to use within any presentation that you do within the classroom can also be found on the website under the eir.ca/resources tab.
Yeah, so under our recordings, we actually do have it's highlighted in orange. It's in orange text, and it says diverse and inclusive messaging photos or something of that sort. And so you can download that file and use them in your own promotional content or whatever you are doing.
I have a question. Sorry, I was quiet about this. This is Chuka again.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
Yeah.
yeah. So going into the class, I was of the opinion. I mean, looking at I'm new to this, so bear with me. But what role does a teacher in the class play really? Because if I'm preparing a presentation, I was of the opinion I would do that and have the teacher be part of that presentation ahead of
Yeah, so ahead of time, you'll want to kind of run through what it is that you're thinking to go and bring into the class with the teacher, just to ensure that it kind of fits in with what the class is learning or has learned throughout the school year, and that it ties into their classroom. And then when you're actually doing the session, the teacher involvement can kind of be discussed between yourself and the teacher, but for the most part, they just need to be in the classroom, there with you and the children. As you run through your activity, they can watch and maybe be a part of it if they'd like, but they're there just to ensure more kind of that the class behaves. So if you run into an issue with the student, hopefully they can come and help with the student or with anything going on, and then you can continue with your lesson undisturbed.
I'll
Yeah,
just
and
I'll just add too that like crowd control, absolutely. They're the experts kind of in their class, and what
Mhm.
they might have certain tricks, right? Maybe they flick the lights to get their attention or something. Like they're gonna know what works there. But I've also seen like you can get the teachers involved too, like helping hand out supplies, or they'll want to get their hands on stuff too. Maybe they're going to want to do the activity with their students. And it's a great way, like one of the interventions that Rebecca and Nathan talked about was asking for help from others. So you can ask the teachers for help in any way you think would work.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, and if there are no other questions, then I guess this is where we formally conclude. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.